Driver Hugh Planey checks the locomotive sheet at Auckland Depot to see for which engine's been assigned to the Wellington Express this afternoon. He meets his fireman Bern Jeffries and, not forgetting his toolbox, they make their way over to JA 1275, which will run the express over the first 86 miles of the 426 to Wellington. It's a long shift, and it'll be some 11 or 12 hours before these men arrive back home in charge of a long goods train. The roller bearings of the locomotive have already been greased, and the cleaners give her a final polish up. Fireman Jeffries carries all the necessities of life in his bag: milk, food, and a teapot. The crew will have a good meal at Frankton and brew a couple of cups of tea on the long haul home with 1,000 tons of city-bound freight. The first and most important thing is to test the level of water in the boiler and see to the fire. Meanwhile, driver Claney makes sure that all moving parts are well lubricated and checks the brake adjustment. It's part of the fireman's duties to fill the mechanical lubricator, which supplies oil to the steam chest. When an engine's been standing for a time, steam leaks into the cooler cylinders and turns to water. This has to be expelled through the cylinder cocks as the engine moves down to the water tank. The tender holds 4,500 gallons of water, just sufficient to run the average express to Frankton. To turn this water into steam, the engine will burn a little over 300 gallons of fuel oil. And now everything's checked. Sand, fuel, water, and brakes okay. The engine moves down the yard and out onto her train. The hand signals give mute but eloquent instructions to the driver as the fireman helps the shunter couple the engine to the train. After checking the full length of the express, the train examiner signals the driver to apply the brakes. The driver moves his brake handle into the application position and checks the air gauge to see that the brake is operating correctly. After the train examiner has satisfied himself that the brakes are working right through to the last vehicle, he gives the driver the signal to release brakes. As the air pressure is pumped up and the reservoirs recharged ready for the run, he gives the train a clearance to proceed. Time 3:40, right away from the guard. As the driver eases the heavy train through the points and out onto the main line, his fireman increases the fuel to the fire to keep up a full head of steam on the big oil burner. cruising down into Westfield, Hugh Claney eases the train to 25 miles an hour through the turnouts, and once clear of the points, picks up speed again as they go through Otahuhu. Vern Jeffries shuts off the injector which pumps the water supply into the boiler. And adjusts the oil fuel feed. At the same time, he keeps an eye on the steam gauge and on the white hot glow at the fire door inspection hole. "21 miles and 33 minutes out, the brakes are applied for the first stop at Papakura. The fuel oil leaves a coating of carbon on the boiler tubes, which slows down the heating of the water in the boiler. Sand is poured into the firebox, and the draft from the exhaust sucks it through the tubes like a sandblaster, removing all the carbon. Railwaymen call this tubing out. When running at speed, the blowdown cock is open. This blows out the sludge from the bottom of the boiler and helps to prolong its life. Mercer, about halfway to Frankton. While the driver checks around the engine, the fireman tops up the tender with water so there'll be ample for the remainder of the run. locomotives, picking up speed now as it heads south to Frankfurt. In the cab, the crew keep a close vigil on the track and signals ahead. And after 86 miles in a little over 2 hours, the train rattles into Frankfurt. Here, there's an engine change. Away goes our JA. And backing on is 145 tons of KA locomotive for the mountainous run through the King Country. Driving and firing these big steamers is a tough job for experienced crews. And it needs teamwork too, on the footplate.